From a bruised Mel Gibson stumbling into an audition by accident, to real bikers tearing down Austrian highways on their motorcycles, these are the weird facts about Mad Max that nobody ever saw coming. Mel Gibson's journey into Mad Max wasn't planned at all. He only showed up at the audition to give moral support to his friend. And the craziest part is that he had just been in a bar fight the night before, so his face was bruised and swollen. The casting team took one look at him and thought he was there for a rough extra role. Now they told him to come back later once he healed up. A couple weeks later, when Gibson returned, he looked completely different. Clean, calm, and movie ready. The same crew who once mistook him for a random extra now saw something special. And just like that, he landed the lead role that would change his life forever. Sometimes life really does cast you when you least expect it. Now before long, that same low-budget energy carried through the entire production, and it showed in the wildest way possible. The Mad Max crew didn't have much money to spare. In fact, they were so broke that extras weren't paid in cash, but in beer. Yeah, locals who joined as background characters in the wild crowd scenes were given slabs of beer for their time. And honestly, it worked out perfectly. The energy you see in those wild street shots, it's a bunch of happy Aussies genuinely having fun, and a bunch of beer. The same fearless attitude carried onto the set, especially when it came to the stunts. The stunts in Mad Max weren't just dangerous, they were downright brutal. With limited safety gear and tight deadlines, actors and stunt performers pushed themselves to the limit. Some even worked with broken bones. One performer famously did a crash scene with his leg still in a cast. There was no CGI here, no fancy editing, just real people risking real injuries for the perfect shot. Maybe that raw realism came from the top, because the man directing all of this chaos knew firsthand what real injuries looked like. Before George Miller became the mastermind behind Mad Max, he was saving lives in a hospital. The guy was a real-life emergency room doctor. After long shifts treating crash victims and patching up injuries, he started to imagine stories about chaos, machines, and survival. His medical background gave him a realistic eye for pain and damage, which you can feel in every brutal crash scene. Miller even used his doctor's salary to help fund the film, proving that passion can drive creativity, especially when money is tight. And that same scrappy creativity extended beyond the camera, even to the props that they used on set. The crew had a serious problem: no money for props. So what did they do? They borrowed them. At night, the set designers quietly took signs, crates, and random items from local shops. They used them for filming and then returned everything the next morning before anybody even noticed. It was risky as hell, but it was also super smart. And it gave the world of Mad Max that rough, lived-in look without costing a penny. And speaking of a little bit of rebellion, the next move from the crew was downright illegal. The Mad Max crew couldn't afford filming permits, so they decided to take matters into their own hands. They actually blocked off public roads, they would shoot as fast as they could, and then they would disappear before the authorities showed up. It was pure guerrilla filmmaking, reckless but thrilling. Sometimes they got lucky and nobody noticed. Other times, curious cops would stop to see what was going on. Instead of shutting them down, some officers actually helped closing roads for the crew so they could film safely. And if that wasn't wild enough, wait until you hear who they hired to play the movie's terrifying biker gang. To make the movie's biker gangs look real, the production didn't hire typical actors. They brought in actual motorcycle gang members with their own bikes. These guys, they didn't have to act tough. They already lived that life. They roared through the streets of Australia together, practicing their rides and stunts as a group. The result was an authentic, dangerous edge that no Hollywood actor could ever fake. But things got even crazier when the movie's gritty look had a strange secret: using broken Hollywood lenses from another film. Mad Max's unique visual style came from something most filmmakers would avoid: damaged lenses. The crew got their hands on old camera lenses left over from Steve McQueen's film The Getaway. Now, a lot of them were scratched, bent, or even barely functional. But instead of throwing them out, George Miller used them to film high-speed chases and intense close-ups. And while the lenses were borrowed from Hollywood, the editing process happened in a far less glamorous place. With almost no budget left, George Miller had to edit Mad Max in his own kitchen. The kitchen table became the editing desk, and the sound design happened right there in the living room. His co-producer, Byron Kennedy, worked with him side by side, cutting film reels and syncing sounds late into the night. This is the ultimate example of doing more with less. When the film hit America, something strange happened. Even Mel Gibson's voice didn't sound like Mel Gibson anymore.
Must have cut his heart out, eh?
When Mad Max was released in the United States, every single voice in the film was dubbed over with American accents. The producers thought US audiences wouldn't understand the thick Australian voices, so they replaced them all, including Mel Gibson's. Fans in America had no idea they weren't hearing the real actors, and it took years before most people even heard the original Australian version. And while America got a tamer version, other countries didn't even get to see the film at all. When Mad Max started making waves around the world, not every country was ready for his brutal style. New Zealand banned it for years after a real biker gang incident made the film feel a little too close to reality. Sweden also refused to show it, saying the violence was excessive and disturbing. But, naturally, that only made the movie more popular. People everywhere wanted to see the banned film everybody was talking about. Pirated copies spread underground, turning Mad Max into a worldwide legend. Mad Max was still held together by pure hustle, and sometimes that meant using whatever they had in their own driveway. Money was tight, so George Miller had to get creative, not just with props, but with vehicles too. Now, some of the cars you see on screen were borrowed from his own family. That distinctive blue van, that belonged to his dad. The crew used whatever they could find to keep production rolling, sometimes using personal cars for multiple scenes. And all that effort paid off in ways that nobody could have ever imagined. With no CGI and barely any money for safety experts, every explosion you see in Mad Max was 100% real. The crew literally blew up junk cars they found in scrapyards, using homemade explosives and camera tricks to make it look even bigger. Sometimes they only had one take to get it right. If they messed up, that was it. The risk was real, but those raw explosions became part of what made Mad Max feel so intense and dangerous. All that effort paid off in ways nobody could have imagined. For a movie made on scraps, Mad Max pulled off the impossible. With a budget of barely over $300,000, it went on to make more than $100 million worldwide. That made it one of the most profitable films ever created. Mad Max proved that creativity, risk, and passion could beat big money any day of the week. From a kitchen edit to global fame, it became a legend born from pure grit. And that's how a small, chaotic Australian movie roared its way into film immortality. Now, if you love these wild behind-the-scenes facts, hit like and subscribe. More movie madness is on the way.